King, Dr. Kevin King.
I feel like that's probably some of the loudest cheers that addiction has probably gotten in a long time, right? I want to start by thanking the organizers, both at the national level and here. They're all early career researchers. These are graduate students, these are postdocs, these are ECRs. Y'all are amazing. Thank you so much. I'm old, I'm white, I'm tenured, I even have a podcast, and I didn't do this. They did this. And I also want to thank you, because I think a lot of you here are also scientists, you're healthcare workers, and you probably have felt like we've felt for the last month and a half. We've felt so alone. We've been sitting in our offices getting cryptic messages about things that come on down from high, about how we're supposed to respond to this administration, about what's being cut, what data sets are going down. And we've just been wondering, how the hell are we going to respond to this? What are we going to do? And I have to say, it fills my heart, it fills my soul to see all of you here supporting us. It means so much to us that you're here. And I thought I would start with a story about a little boy who was never, ever looking down. He was always looking up. He was looking up at the sky, looking up at the world around him. He spent his childhood wanting to understand the weather, to predict the weather, to communicate those predictions to people. He went to college, he trained in meteorology, he even got a job as a weekend weatherman in Missoula, Montana. That didn't exactly turn out to be his dream job, so he eventually made his way over to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration at NOAA. He helped them translate research code into production code that would help improve the forecast that all of us rely on. For a boy who named his computers after Marvel characters like Wolverine and Magneto, this was Willie's dream job. Willie's one of my closest friends. We met in high school and bonded all over all of that science fiction, Star Wars, video games. And just last week, just like you heard earlier, he was also summarily fired from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Because somehow, even after decades at NOAA and in the weather industry, he was still a probationary employee because he had just gotten promoted because of his excellent work. And Willie's like all of us in science. All we've ever wanted to do is learn about the world, to understand it a little bit better, and then communicate it back to the rest of you. That's all we want to do. Now me, I'm a psychologist. I want to understand you a little bit better. That's what my lab does. We want to understand, how come a lot of people try alcohol and drugs, but only some of us develop addictions with it? And this matters because addiction touches all of our lives. Either many of us here have struggled with addictions, or we have family members, loved ones, colleagues, friends who themselves have struggled with addictions. And as we struggle with addictions, we fight societal messages that somehow there's something wrong with us, that we have poor moral character, we don't have self-control, we can't control ourselves, there's something wrong with us. And our science is about speaking up and fighting for that. Fighting against those messages and trying to understand how our genetics, how our personalities, how our social lives shape the development of these problems that many times we get the message that society doesn't care about. That it's not important, that once you're an addict, we can write you off. And we say that's not true. We say you're important, you're worthy of love, and you're worthy of understanding and compassion and empathy. And we do it how we know. We do it by systematically understanding your lives, to try to improve knowledge about people with addiction and communicate that to the world. We do that with surveys, we do that with interviews, we do that with experiments, we do that with blood draws. I don't do that with blood draws, that squicks me out, but some people do that with blood draws. And imaging studies and text messages in every way imaginable. We try to understand your lives. And we try to understand your lives because we think you're worthy of study, and we think you're worthy of being understood so that we can help all of our lives be better. So I can give you one example from the work that we do in my lab at the University of Washington. So when you ask people about the reasons they might drink or use drugs, a lot of times people will say, well, I use it to feel better. I use it when I'm feeling bad. In fact, there's entire genres of music dedicated to singing or rapping or explaining. There's even how we use alcohol and drugs to improve our moods. This is a really, really prevalent idea. So we and lots of other labs use a method where we ask people lots of times throughout the day, kind of over and over and over again, how you're thinking, what you're feeling, and what you're doing. And we've been trying to understand, okay, well, do people who say that they use drugs for these reasons, do they actually seem to do that in their daily lives? And it's pretty tedious kind of research, right? It costs a lot of money. We send a lot of messages to people. Ping, hey, how you feeling? What are you doing? Ping, hey, what's up? Ping, how you doing? Yeah, these studies take a long time. They cost a lot of money. They use a lot of personnel. And what we found over and over again from this research is that people don't seem to drink more or be any more likely to drink when they've had bad days. Our intuitions about this seem to be kind of wrong. There's this conflicting belief that what we believe about ourselves doesn't play out in our daily lives. And what we find interesting about that is that can inform treatments. Right? That can inform just-in-time adaptive interventions, that can inform new medication developments. It can inform all kinds of things that can help make our world better. But that all costs money. It costs money in personnel, it costs money in the graduate students that, as Ella pointed out, actually run our labs. That do the data analysis, that people like Diego, who's here today, that communicates with the participants and helps them understand what they're getting into. And it tries to communicate to them how valuable and important they are when they participate in our research. Science is about trying to resolve and understand these mysteries of life, to understand why our intuitions might be wrong, and gives us a framework for understanding our world a little bit better. This research, our research, and all kinds of psychological research tries to untangle the contradictions that lie inside all of us. And all of that research costs money. It's expensive. It's hard to recruit participants. It's important to pay participants for their time when they engage in our research. It's important to pay graduate students a fair and living wage so that they can actually conduct this research. And it costs money and time to process and analyze the data and get it out to the world. Now, we think that money, most of which has come from NIH and our lab, is a worthy investment. Addiction alone costs nearly $750 billion each year to the United States. And frankly, every health researcher and every social science researcher could come up here and tell you numbers that are similar about how important it is and what economic costs it has. And the thing is that societal problems can't be solved without societal investment. And that's what investment in science is. Private industry is not going to come with a solution for addiction. There's no money in it for them. There's no juice for them to squeeze. We have to band together as a society to be fighting addictions, to be fighting climate change, to be developing new vaccines, to be studying basic science questions. Our tax dollars are at work here, and our tax dollars have a benefit, and they matter. Just in the Department of Psychology, we have researchers fighting to understand and using public dollars to improve people's lives, like Sherry's work deepening our understanding of the neural circuits of addiction, or Andrea's work on brain-to-brain communication, or my colleague Lily's work on how childhood adversity shapes how children regulate their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Federal funding for science generates economic activity that's more than double the amount that is invested. The returns on that funding, in terms of health improvements, patents, medication developments, and broader economic impact, is many times that. Federal funding trains the next generation of scientists that we hope will outshine us and will form the foundation of the scientific future of the United States. And all of that science is under attack right now. The current administration wants to dramatically cut this investment in science from supporting the kinds of innovations that make all of our lives better. They're proposing cuts to the research infrastructures that allows projects like mine to happen, and ensures that I and other researchers spend your tax dollars responsibly and fairly. They're threatening and have already started getting rid of a large swath of the federal workforce within of scientific workforce within the federal government, and cutting training programs for the next generation of scientists. And they're not just trying to stop science, they're not just trying to defund it, they're censoring us. They're telling us how we're supposed to measure things like gender and sexuality. They're taking down data sets that explicitly mention that. They're pulling grants that have already been funded, or grants that have been submitted that are focused on DEI, solving inequity, and focusing on LGBT and trans issues. They're pulling it because they assert without evidence and against the scientific consensus of the field that they know and understand how gender, sexuality, equality, and diversity work. and that all of us are apparently doing it wrong. This is censoring, plain and simple. This is antithetical to science, because they're deciding ahead of time they know the answers to important questions and deciding that they will brook no argument or consider no alternative perspective. So look, I should finish up because we're all just going to keep getting angrier. Yeah, aren't we all? And I'm just going to ask you, I'm going to first say thank you for being here, and let's turn this anger into action. Let's call on our elected representatives. Let's call on our leaders in government, in business, in administration, in academia. Fight for us. Fight for our funding. Fight for science, and most of all, stand up for science. Thank you.